Welcome to This Week in Legal Blogging, in which we talk with leading bloggers from across the legal industry. This program is presented by LexBlog, providing lawyers with turnkey digital publishing solutions and strategic consulting for 16 years. My name is Bob Ambrogi. I'm the host, and I am the author of the blog Law Sites and also my own podcast called Law Next. This show, I just want to remind everybody, if you're watching this on video, we are now also available in podcast form, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and soon on pretty much any podcast platform you can think of. And you can always find the past episodes of this show on YouTube at youtube.com/LexBlog. And today I am very happy to be joined by Peter Mahler, who's a partner in the New York law firm Farrell Fritz and creator of the blog New York Business Divorce. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. I bow to the king of legal tech.
Well, it's very nice to have you here. And How have you been doing during all this craziness that's been going on?
Yeah, it's been crazy for everyone, not just me. And my office I work out of our city office, and as everyone knows, the city got hit very hard starting in March when everything closed down in the city. And
New York City, we're talking about. So, yeah.
And but I'm fortunate because my office, my firm has offices on Long Island, including out on the east end of Long Island where I live. So I've been working at home really since March and occasionally using our office out on the East End. But things are starting to reactivate even in the city. And I expect to be spending some time in the city office fairly soon. So maybe things are getting back to normal, although if you read the headlines these days, it's not really certain what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've been doing very well. And surprisingly, the litigation biz, or at least my piece of that biz, it hasn't gone away during the pandemic. There are arbitrations that go on even though the courts are closed, the arbitrations go on. Everyone's adapting to, virtual conferences, and so business goes on.
Well, it's excuse me. It's funny that you say that business goes on, because one of the first things I wanted to ask you about is exactly what your business is. What does a business divorce lawyer do?
Yeah. Many people, when they hear business divorce, they hear the word divorce. They don't really hear the word business, so they assume it has something to do with matrimonial divorces. And of course, it doesn't. Right. I've never handled matrimonials. It's not it was a term that was around for many years, not nearly as well known as it is today, but it generally refers to all sorts of disputes between co-owners of closely held businesses. We're not dealing with public companies. We're only dealing with closely held businesses, whether they're corporations or partnerships, or more frequently today, LLCs. And sometimes those disputes ripen into litigation. In the form of someone wants to dissolve the company. Sometimes it's just other types of claims of wrongdoing. Generally, when disputes of that nature between partners gets to that point, it's almost always the point of no return. And in the end, these business partners are going to separate one way or the other. In many instances, it will result in a buyout of some sort. So the discipline, if I can, give it that lofty name, requires not only knowledge of, the substantive law surrounding dissolution, breach of fiduciary duty, things like that, but oftentimes it also gets you into business valuation, and that's one of my favorite aspects of this practice. I'm not a business appraiser, but as a lawyer, you're really doing what I do. You really have to learn. You have to know the lingo. You have to be able to communicate effectively with business appraisers, real estate appraisers. So it's a varied practice, and I enjoy it immensely.
Yeah. Does that include breakup of family-owned businesses?
Funny you say that. I've been doing this for decades, and I don't know if it's just coincidence or something else going on, but over the years, more and more and more of my practice has involved family-owned businesses. And, those are tough because you've
Those are
got
tough.
father against son, brother against sister, uncle against nephew, niece, and the emotions are through the roof, and sometimes they can get in the way of business decision making. So and there's a lot of client hand holding that goes along with that. But I would say at this point, more than half of my business divorce practice is dealing with family owned businesses. And in
Interesting.
New York City is a real estate town, and there are so many um, family-owned real estate companies or partnerships that may go back one, two, three, sometimes even four generations. And with each successive generation, those family ties loosen and fray, and I'm dealing with those, second, third, fourth generation, family real estate partnerships that are now breaking up. Usually, not usually, but abetted by the fact that the agreements that govern their company were done, 40 years ago,
Yeah.
and hardly worth the paper they're written
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
But
Are any of them named Trump?
um, no, no, no. So I'll leave it at that.
You had to think about it for a second. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I know it's I don't know a lot about this area, but I do know here in Massachusetts where I am, there was a very, very messy breakup of a family-owned supermarket business,
Yes,
which went way up and down through the appellate courts and back again, went on for years and years and years, and very notorious case around these parts.
yeah, no, these cases do tend to go on. I've had some that have lasted as long as 8 years, believe it or not. Um, and it's just because there's so much emotion. These people, whether it's family or even not family, there's feelings of betrayal. I've been stabbed in the back by someone that I trusted and knew for 30 years. Maybe they were my best friend in high school.
Yeah.
And so, it's very hard for some of these people to, and I understand it. Of course, I understand it. It's very hard for them to simply say, okay, we're going to make a business deal right now. And I'm not going to get the vindication, that I want from a lawsuit.
Yeah. Yeah. So a little bit like a family divorce, a regular divorce,
It
in some
is.
ways, in that there can be hard feelings and
Yeah, instead of the kids, it's the business.
yeah, interesting. So, Peter, you've been writing your blog, New York Business Divorce, since 2007.
Right.
When I talk to somebody who's been blogging that long, I always feel like I'm talking to like a fellow junkie or something. Some people seem to just get into the habit of doing it, and they keep doing it for a long
Yeah.
time. But what got you started down this road way back in 2007? Why did you start a blog in the first place?
I had been doing some writing for legal publications going back to the late 90s, I'd say. I was writing articles for the New York Law Journal. I was writing articles for the New York State Bar Association Journal. So I was starting to get out there and get some reputation, and that led to invites to speak. And fast forward to about, I don't know, I'd say about 2004 or 5, I started to notice a few law blogs, including some published by the nascent company. What's it called again? LexBlog?
LexBlog.
Yeah, yeah. And so and around that same time, I remember getting some calls from prospective clients, some of whom became clients in Business Divorce Matters. And I said, well, how did you find me? And they mentioned that they had seen some of those print media articles online. And I had no clue how that happened. I mean, I'm not talking Westlaw or Lexis. Somehow they were seeing my writing online. and somehow I love to write. I mean, writing was the way I always thought that I would be able to grab some attention and develop client, bring in clients, because I write very well. I write very well. Let's just put it out there. And so somehow I made that connection between, on the one hand, I'm seeing these interesting things called law blogs, and then I'm getting calls from people who find me online, and sort of that was the connection I made. And so, around, I don't know, 2006, I started to get more serious about it. No one in my law firm knew what a blog was, so I had to overcome some inertia in terms of getting the support I wanted to start the blog. And then by 2007, I was really pushing it, and I got in touch with Kevin O'Keefe, and we started, and we went live at the end of 2007, and I started publishing a piece every Monday, and have not missed a Monday since then. And here we are. How many years later? 13 years later. 13. And I, so I do once a week religiously, and I joke with people, if you don't see the piece on Monday, go look for an obituary. But I think keeping that regular schedule. I mean, there's a core group of loyal readers. They're not even necessarily clients or prospective clients. In fact, they're probably not. They're mostly lawyers, some judges, and it's like they come to expect it. Some of them tell me the first thing I do Monday morning, I look at your blog. The pieces that I write, and when I say I write, over the last couple of years, I brought in a partner of mine, and I just recently brought in a younger lawyer, and they're sharing some of the writing now. They're because I'm getting long in the tooth, and I want to make sure that as I fade out, others will fade in. So we're starting to do that. We do long form blogging. It's against all the rules that Kevin O'Keefe writes about. He says 500 words, no more. Right. I'm writing anywhere from 12 and sometimes to 2,000 words, and once in a while over 2,000, and I just can't help myself. And that's what we do. And believe it or not, I think certainly amongst the lawyers and the legal profession that reads these things, I think they appreciate that long form. But I'm sort of wedded to it now, and I don't know any other way to do it.
Yeah, I don't buy that theory that you have to keep it down, excuse me, to under 500 words or so. It really depends on the content and what you're writing about in the audience and the subject matter. I mean, even in writing about legal technology, I mean, I'll routinely write posts that are 1,000, 1,500 words even. I think today I've already written about 3,000 words over a couple of different posts. So, it really is determined more by your topic and your readership. I do think it's funny though that some lawyers don't know how to get away from writing like lawyers when they write a blog post. And I think that you said it yourself. You're a good writer. I think you're a very good writer. And one of the things I like about your writing, and I don't know how intentional this is in your mind, but you don't just kind of start the way a lawyer would start, like in the case of Smith and Reed Jones or something. You write a catchy lead. It looks like you've written for a newspaper or something.
I don't call myself a journalist, but I try and emulate what I think a journalist would do in terms of that opening and try and make it catchy. I mean, if you really drill down, it's sort of formulaic. I'll have that lead. I'll try and make it catchy. I'll introduce the subject in sort of a broad way that sets some sort of a theme for what I'm talking about. And then, most 90% of my pieces have to do with a case, a decision, a court decision that was recently published. That's the fodder for what I write about. Right. And then at the end, I'll always try, at the end to sort of do my value add analysis, closing thoughts, takeaway, and put some real thought into that, because I think that's in some ways the most valuable part of what I write for people. How does this help you either litigate your case? Or how does this help you if you're drafting an LLC operating agreement? How does this avoid some sort of a pitfall that otherwise you might fall into? And I think that's the real value. And I've heard, I've even listened to other interviews you've done on this program, Bob, with lawyers, and we all say the same thing. You can't just writing a synopsis of a case. There's really no value add there. That's not going to impress readers with your expertise. They really see that expertise when you bring some analysis and advice together with your description of the case, if that's what you're writing about. And I really do think that is how I've been successful in attracting some following, but also, most of my, you haven't asked, I'll tell you, most of my business either comes directly or I'll say indirectly from my blog. And it's as astonishing to me today as it was when those first calls and emails started coming in, 10, 12 years ago. And most of those people they're not subscribers, because the subscribers are usually just lawyers. They're business owners. And I think over the years, more and more and more, particularly as business owners today are generally younger than me, and more tech savvy than me, their first instinct, I believe, is to do their own research, not to pick up the phone to some lawyer that they know or don't know, but to go online, Google whatever search terms they're using, and the right search terms, I'm going to be on page one. And they'll look at my stuff. They may not read it top to bottom, but they'll get a sense that, hey, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And it's been a real recipe for marketing success. I mean, I hope I don't sound too boastful about it, but it's really worked. And I think part of the reason it's worked is because it is such a micro niche practice. And there are very few. I mean, if you're doing employment law, I imagine there must be 300 law blogs out there on employment law.
Yeah.
There's really I don't even know if there's any other business divorce blog that publishes the way I do. So with the right search terms, I'm always going to be on page one. And it's worked out very well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And no, it doesn't sound boastful at all. I mean, that's why LexBlog paid you thousands of dollars to be on this show and give this.
You didn't mention the kickback, though, did you?
Yeah, no, I didn't mention
the kickback to Colin. No, you didn't mention that.
Well, there's that too, of course. Yeah, got to do that. So when you're Are you thinking about that when you're writing your blog post? I mean, you've mentioned that you have a lot of different kinds of readers, and you mentioned kind of putting sort of advice or what this means to you in your posts. I mean, who are you thinking about as your audience when you're writing your blog posts?
Yeah, it's I don't think I'm thinking about any one slice of the audience, because yes, I am trying to not write like I'm writing a brief so that laypersons, business owners can read it and understand it and get some value from it. Also writing it for lawyers and judges too, though. I mean, because much of the business that I get is lawyers who are not litigators, who have a client who has a problem with their business partner. They know me, they've heard of me from the blog. So I'm also writing for them to let them know that here's a great resource and you can read these articles and really get some value from them. And by the way, I if you need some help, I'm the guy. I will never, put some sort of a closing line, if you need help with your business partner, give me a call at whatever. I never do that. I let the pieces speak for themselves, so to speak. Right. And that seems to have worked. But, I'm surprised that others haven't emulated what I do by other localities, the California business divorce blog, the Illinois, there are, one of the wonderful things about being a New York lawyer doing what I do is that, we have a huge court system. We're not the most populous state, but we're up there. And, there's never a lack of things for me to write about. There are always new decisions. In the first year or so, I was always worried, what will I write about?
Right.
It's Thursday, it's Friday, and I don't have anything. There's always something to write about. I'm not sure that's true in other states, particularly smaller states that don't have the same volume of court activity. But in New York, that's there's it's just never ending. There's always material, and going back to your question, I'm trying. I'm writing for business owners. I'm writing for lawyers. I'm writing for business appraisers who can be sources of business. And I also think of the judges. I know there are judges who read my posts as well, and so I'm writing for them as well, and which means I have to be very careful what I write, particularly if I'm writing about those judges' decisions.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, you mentioned you brought up the question of why lawyers in other states who have practices similar to yours aren't doing what you're doing. So you must get a lot of inquiries from outside of New York, from people who are Googling this topic and come across you. How do you handle those?
Yeah, there's I do get calls like that from either lawyers or business owners in other states, and they're not dealing with New York entities. I'm a New York lawyer. I'm not licensed outside of New York, and the laws in this area of the law, there are very, very significant differences state to state to state. So if someone calls me up from California and says they have a problem with their California LLC, I'll always talk to them, and if I can help them or share some response to them, I will. But those are not matters that will go anywhere from there. The more useful calls from out of state would be, the California lawyer who has a cousin in New York who's involved in a business dispute of some sort, and that's sort of the round trip. It'll come to me that way. But generally, yeah, I'll stick to New York and sometimes Delaware, because there are, and this is true across the country. Delaware is sort of a choice of many companies, particularly the larger ones, will incorporate or form their LLC in Delaware, but they're operating in other states, including New York. So that's the one exception to the rule where I'll have to develop some expertise in Delaware law, even dealing with cases that are in New York involving Delaware corporations or LLCs.
You now have a podcast in addition to your blog.
Oh, you're hitting a sore point.
Is that a sore spot?
It's a sore spot because I love doing it, and I have had a heck of a time finding the time to do it. I started off with a bang when I started the podcast. I was probably aiming to do 5 or 6 a year, which is nothing to you, I'm sure, but for me, with a practice and a blog and God knows what else, finding the time to do that, was difficult. And over the years, I've really, I haven't been able to keep up that pace. I think I've only put up either 1 or 2 this year, and I don't have one in the pipeline at the moment. I'd love to get back to that. I'm also, one of my other projects in mind, I haven't done it yet, is to do short form video, probably for LinkedIn. I was thinking YouTube, but I think LinkedIn is probably the better forum for that, to do, like 3 or 4 minute videos. It could just be a recap of my blog post from that week. I got to just find the time to do that. But that's really something I'd love to get started.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned bringing in a couple of other lawyers from your firm to contribute to your blog and write on your blog. Is your thinking that is going to mean sort of eventually you start to phase out of that every Monday routine and they do more of it, or what are you thinking?
I swallowed very hard when, my management was encouraging me, shall we say, to do this, looking further down the road. And I have to confess, I resisted for a while, and then I swallowed very hard and said, yeah, it's the right thing to do. And I brought in someone who's now one of my partners, and he's Frank McRoberts. He's been helping we've been on a rotation, 3-1 rotation for some years now. And I actually find, true confession, I actually starting to enjoy weekends that I don't have to spend 5 hours writing the blog. So that's a sign of something. I don't know what. But yeah, seriously, that is the plan to, I'm 65, but I'm not going to do this forever. And I think it's a good idea to bring, we all think it's a good idea to bring others in, and so that really the firm becomes associated with not just Peter Mahler, but my law firm becomes associated with business divorce. If you need a good business divorce lawyer, go to Farrell Fritz. I mean, I think that's really the marketing approach.
Yeah. And so you see your blog as not your blog, but your firm's blog.
Can I take the fifth on that?
Yeah, you can. But so actually, what I want to ask about bringing them in is, had they been blogging before? Did you train them? Did you give them advice? How did you get them up to speed on it?
Yeah, no, I mean, they both happen to be very, excellent writers. So I can't say there was really any training other than hoping that they have been religiously reading my posts and getting some sense of the flavor. I mean, they've also been doing this long form blogging, and they understand that there's this, I always call it value added concept. You can't just say, here's a case and this is what the court held. So, I think there is sort of a standard formula that we're all following, and, trying to lead with something that grabs attention, talking about the case. I guess to the extent that I'm helping as a mentor, I'm sort of emphasizing the visual importance of the blog. Get away from those long paragraphs, shorter sentences, subheadings, break it up. Those are the things that I think I can be, helpful in mentoring others who are coming onto the blog.
Yeah. You said earlier, maybe you said, if I had you right, you said most of your business, if not all of your business, is coming through your blogging in one way or another.
Well, I said directly or indirectly. The directly part is easy. I get a call from a business owner, and I always will say, well, gee, how did you come across me? And they say, I read I saw your blog. So bingo, I know that's exactly, they Googled, they found my piece, they read it, they called me. Easy. The indirect stuff is harder to pin down. I mean, I'll get a call from a business owner, and I'll say, how did you find me? And they'll mention the name of some lawyer that I've never heard of.
Right.
I make the assumption that lawyer knows me from the blog. I mean, it's possible it could be otherwise.
Yeah.
But, those things are hard to pin down. But and you know this as well, if not better than I do, that there is that sort of environmental impact of blogging where, it's just sort of people. It's not that there's a particular article you wrote on a subject that is of importance to them. They just, from that exposure, they just know that this is your specialty.
Right.
And they're not seeing others, at least in New York, who are promoting that specialty. So, that's what I mean sort of by the indirect. Because I'm not out there, I do some speaking, not a lot.
Yeah.
But, I'm not, I don't do a lot of bar association activity, which is another traditional way of getting referral business. I don't really do any of that. So in one way or another, I'm saying it really does emanate from the blog. And I still do write. I still write. For 20-something years, I've been writing an annual piece for the New York Law Journal that seems to, people seem to enjoy that. I'm not sure that has ever brought me a client, because that's just read by lawyers.
Yeah. So apart from that direct and indirect business that it's brought in, have there been other benefits to you or your career from blogging over all these years?
Oh, other benefits. Well, look, I not every week, but most of the time, I really enjoy writing the piece. And even if it means giving up, any number of hours on the weekend. They really, each piece I think of as my baby, and I'll write it, I'll spend however many hours doing it, and then I'll come back to it throughout the rest, because I publish Monday morning. I'll come back to it again and again and again over the weekend. Even Monday morning, I used to try and post by 6:30 in the morning. I'd still be editing, at 6:15. So I really care about the blog. I care about the pieces, and there is a sense of, satisfaction, reward. I mean, if it wasn't also building my business, would I feel that way? I don't know. But
right.
But in the first couple of years, I mean, it wasn't as if I started publishing in '07 and instantly business was flooding in. It did take a while.
Yeah.
It took, I don't know, I'd say it was really 2 or 3 years before the drips became more of a steady flow. And I don't know if that's because of, the way the Google search engine works or whatever it was, but, it wasn't immediate, but I still, I like to think I'd still be doing it, even if it wasn't generating the business it does. Who knows?
Yeah. Were you doing anything in those early years to get word out about your blog or to promote your blog or to?
I think I went on Twitter and would always promote it on Twitter. I never found Twitter to be a particularly valuable vehicle to promote, my work. LinkedIn more recently, over the last, 4 or 5 years, I'd say I find more value in promoting it on LinkedIn, particularly the LinkedIn groups. There are a number of LinkedIn groups that focus on business divorce stuff and with a significant following. And when they see, so I'm every week posting my a link to my pieces on the groups. And I think that is, and these groups include lawyers from all over the country, and I think that helps. And then, as I said, some speaking engagements, including, the LLC Institute, which you may or may not have ever heard of. It's a wonderful subsection of the American Bar Association that attracts, the best of the best minds in the world of, from academia, practicing lawyers, in the world of closely held businesses. And so I go there every year. I've spoken several times, and that is just a fantastic group of professionals to be exposed to and to try and, display your expertise in front of.
Well, I've been asking you lots of questions. Do you have any final words that you'd like to say about your blog or about blogging in general before we wrap up?
Well, nothing terribly original. I mean, I think that I guess maybe I'm just sort of, channeling a little bit of Kevin O'Keefe, where he's constantly beating that drum of niche blogging. I said niche blogging. I do think it is a great vehicle to not only just, become more proficient in an area that you like, but also for young lawyers and some older lawyers as well. If they're interested in online, marketing themselves online, be very selective and careful. And the narrower your subject area, I think the more likely it is that you're going to, get that attention that you want and bring in the business you want. So that's really, those who are watching this and thinking about starting to blog, that would be my advice to them. And as I said, it's not even original advice, but I think it's good advice.
It's good advice. Peter, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
My pleasure here as well. Thank you.
Hope you stay well and keep at it for a while anyway.
I will.
All right. Well, we've been talking with Peter Mahler of the New York Business Divorce blog, which you can find at nybusinessdivorce.com. And a reminder once again that you can find all of the past episodes of our video interviews on YouTube at LexBlog, on youtube.com/LexBlog. Watch for our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. On behalf of everybody at LexBlog, this is Bob Ambrogi. Thanks for watching and listening.